want to talk a little bit about my own personal experience with burnout because I think it's something that many people are going through more and more in our society today. And I've certainly seen it in myself. And there's some patterns that I've recognized in my own experience with burnout. And I just thought that sharing them could possibly help some people who are also going through these things. And I think it's good to listen to some of the advice that's out there, the more standard advice. But I think it's also really important to look at your own personal patterns if you feel like you're burning out a lot and question what's actually happening there. And I think that's the only way that I've found to help myself in terms of burnout. Because I found that I was going through burnout very often. And it was hard to pin down exactly why that was happening. And I would follow the standard advice of taking a day off, assigning time to actually rest, trying to get enough sleep, doing all of those things. And I found that still wasn't working on some level. And so I started to examine what was happening in my own burnout a little deeper. And I realized that a lot of the advice that I had been hearing about burnout was about doing too many things and about setting aside time to rest. And I think people burn out in different ways. Everyone's burnout is different. So you have to figure out what works for you. But what I realized is that while I was taking those periods of rest, while I would set aside some time to rest, I realized my mind was not resting. I was still in the back of my mind, always going through this kind of processing of problems, whether it was trying to solve something at work, whether it was trying to solve some sort of issue in my personal life or some sort of thing about myself that I wanted to transcend, some sort of like personal development thing. And I found that it wasn't so much about doing too many things with me. When I was younger, I definitely would push myself to do more and more and more and more because I think that's what we value in our society. I think we value people who do a lot. But I don't think that's where my value is today. I think my value today is more in doing less, but making sure that the things that I do are very conscious, that I'm doing them consciously, and I'm choosing them consciously rather than just saying yes to everything because it's in front of me and because someone asked. And the younger version of me would absolutely say yes to all sorts of things I had no interest in. I think that's another place where burnout creeps up on you, where you say yes to things that seem important in the moment, or it seems like you should do it for someone else. And it could be a simple thing like your friends are asking you to go out or they're asking you to go on a trip with them. And these things could seem fun and they could be something that you are interested in doing. But if you know you're already burnt out and then someone asks that question and you keep doing it, then you're just going to push yourself deeper into that burnout. I think the best way to get ahead of burnout is to just notice it before it happens. And I think that's often what we fail to do, is we feel the burnout coming on, we feel the exhaustion. And then rather than step back and actually start to figure out how we can get some rest on a mental and physical level, we just keep going. We think that we can just keep going and going and going, and that somehow there's going to be some sort of rest at the end of that, but very often that doesn't happen. If you are in a position where you don't feel comfortable in your everyday life, where things feel tiring, things feel exhausting, you have to take a step back and do something different. Because whatever you did to get you into the burnout is not going to be what gets you out of it. And I noticed that in myself, that I would have patterns with work, patterns with thought. And when I keep those patterns going and I don't examine them any further, I just get deeper and deeper and deeper into whatever it is that I'm stuck in. And I've realized that for me, anytime I want to make any change in my life, paying attention to these patterns is almost always what can get me out of it. Because that's how I realized that I was always in this kind of mental processing mode, even if I was trying to rest, even if I was doing something mundane, if I was cooking, if I was doing laundry, I would always have this like the processor like on a computer where it's just always constantly running in the background trying to solve something. There was always a question that I had. There was always some sort of question. But what I realized is very often I was asking these questions and then finding answers to them. But it wouldn't lead to any sort of peace. It wouldn't lead to any sort of personal progress. It wouldn't lead to anything that justified going through all that trouble to have these questions. And what I realized most of all is when I just dropped the questions, when I just stopped asking questions completely, that's when I was actually able to rest. I'd pay attention to the questions as they arose, and then would just let them go, just drop them. And if you're in a pattern where you're asking the questions and answering them and answering them and answering them and always going forward in that, you're in this endless hamster wheel of answering these questions. Whereas if you stop answering them, that suddenly becomes the pattern where you let them just arise and then you let them go. And I think from my own personal experience, I think people's susceptibility to burnout definitely comes from childhood experiences on some level. Because I think in my own childhood, and I think when I was growing up, I think I was tired all the time. I think that there was always something going on in my household or in my schooling where I think that to protect myself, I had to ask a lot of questions to try to figure out what the right way to move forward was. It's a self-protection mechanism. I think we develop it in childhood and it carries into adulthood with us. And I found myself stuck in the questioning mode because I think it was I really think it was about self-protection on some level, about trying to get ahead of these things before they got ahead of me. And I think that since I was accustomed from my childhood to always be tired, to always be having some sort of problem to solve, that just became the default state. I just always would create something to solve, no matter what it was. It could be my diet. It could be something with work. It could be YouTube. I remember when I started doing YouTube, I just went down the rabbit hole. I mean, not when I started, but fairly recently when I was trying to monetize the page, I just went further and further and further down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to solve this problem, how to get to the end of this goal. And I got there and I figured it out, but I realized that I was really tired at the end of it. And I realized that I wasn't completely doing everything the way that I wanted to do it. I was doing it in the way that I thought was the right way because I hadn't even stepped back to take a look at what I was doing and question if it was really me or if I was kind of performing on some level to be what I thought would work. And I think it's just part of the process. Like, you can't guilt yourself for going through these stages where you're questioning things. And I think sometimes burnout could be helpful. You know, if you have to burn out once really badly to really figure out your patterns and really figure out how you got there, then I think that could be beneficial for the rest of your life. And I know the times when I've been really burned out, when I've really got to the end of my rope, those are the times when I examined it because I had no choice. There was no other way to move forward other than examining these things. And I think for myself also, from childhood came with me a propensity to please other people and to do what other people wanted me to do. And I realized that a lot of my burnout, I think, was coming from like an energetic level, was coming from giving energy to people and to situations that I really wasn't interested in. I think there were times in which I was doing things that I literally resented doing because I thought it was the right thing to do. And I realized now how much burnout that led to, and that none of those things really yielded any kind of results that made my life better, and that I was happy that I had gone through the trouble of pushing through and doing something I didn't want to do to get a reward. The reward at the end of doing things that I didn't want to do was never worthwhile. Never. And I think it sneaks up on you in little ways. I think our society today just has so many ways in which burnout can get to you. And for me, sometimes it's literally just conversations with people online. As simple as that can be, when you have all these apps and many of them are people who I'd enjoy talking to. Many of them are with friends. But constantly being sent messages and comments and, videos from friends and all those things, they're really nice. But if you are burnt out, it's really just like another thing you have to keep up with. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really yield anything of substance. It's good to keep in touch with your friends. I think it's also good to understand the boundaries that you have to have in order to not burn out and to move forward in life with the things that you want to move forward with, rather than just getting caught in these patterns, getting caught in these cycles of doing everything that presents itself to you, answering every message that presents itself to you, and not giving yourself that time to rest. And I think being really conscious of who you keep in your life is a very good way to protect yourself from burnout. Because I've realized, even in little interactions with people, that there may be times in which someone is a well-meaning person, but I can just sense in their communication style and in their communication patterns that they want something from me. And they want something from me that I don't want to give to them. Whether it's attention, whether it's validation, whatever it is, it's not that they don't deserve these things. It's just that I don't feel that connection with them. And I don't feel like it's right to lie to them either. I wouldn't want someone lying to me. And so I've found that the best thing to do is to not entertain those relationships for any longer than you need to. And in the past I would, because I would feel like it's rude not to do so, and that if someone is talking to you and is being nice to you, even if it's because they want something in return, that there's still some sort of obligation to entertain that. And now I know that's not the case at all. And as soon as I start to feel that someone's draining my energy, I really try to consciously step back from that person. And sometimes when you do that, the relationship will repair itself. And at times I think that it's not always stepping back because the other person's energy is bad. It's not necessarily always something about the other person. Sometimes it's just that the circumstances of our own life make it so that we can't fully give to this circumstance, to this person, to this relationship in the way that we want to. So the best thing to do for both people is to just step back, get yourself in order, recover a little bit, and come back when you're fully present, come back when you're fully yourself. Because it's also not fair to the people that you really care about if you're just showing up, at 50%. And sometimes that's all you can do, and that's okay if you have to. But I think that aiming towards more conscious interactions with people and more conscious choices is always good. And for myself, that's been the best antidote for getting away from burnout. Because my own burnout, I felt like I was burning out all the time. I would burn out and then need to rest, and burn out and need to rest, and burn out and need to rest. And I found that now I don't get as deep into the burnout. I can occasionally get into the burnout. I find with myself too, it's these kind of obsessive patterns where I'll get really interested in something. Recently it was YouTube, where I had to keep going with it. I just could not put it down. So I was examining it from a million different angles. And in the end, I think it was very beneficial, but I also think that it really, really, really burned me out. I think if you have obsessive patterns, an obsessive personality, an addictive personality, it's really important to pay attention to your patterns and watch for that burnout. So I guess just to recap, the best way to get ahead of burnout is to not get into it in the first place. And the best way to not get into burnout is to burn out and pay attention. Really pay attention to what happened there. Give yourself time to rest. Give yourself time to completely turn off. Completely turn off, not just physically, but also mentally. And sometimes what we need is to turn off mentally, but to keep going physically. We need that physical stimulation. We need that exercise. We need that time outside. But we need it to be with a clear head. So if you're experiencing burnout, hang in there, learn from it, take a break, do what you can to just give yourself the time and the space and the mental clarity to really look at it at some point and figure out how you got there. Because I think the burnout can be a gift if you learn from it, or it can be detrimental to you if you just keep doing it over and over again and never figuring out why. So that's my experience with burnout. I hope this helps in some way. I would love to hear about your experiences with burnout in the comments. And if you found this helpful, subscribe to the channel, and I'd love to see you again.